Welcome back, folks, to the WP-Tonic Show. It's episode 661. I've been really looking forward to this interview, actually. I look forward to all the interviews, but I was really looking forward to this one. We've got Patrick Gallagher, the founder of Gridpane, with us. So, Patrick, could you give us a quick intro, a quick 20-second intro about yourself and about Gridpane?
Yeah. So I ran my own marketing and technology consultancy for almost 13 years. Built a whole bunch of websites, WordPress websites specifically in that time, and used certainly every terrible host in the business, but a handful of good ones too. And it was actually after the second time that I canceled from a really well-known managed WordPress host that I figured, to hell with it. I need to solve this problem once and for all for myself and for my clients. And so I started building the tools that we were using internally, just, an arsenal for ourselves. And after about a year of investing in that, I realized, well, maybe that's actually the more interesting business. And so we launched Gridpane in February of 2018, grew slowly throughout that year, getting feedback, iterating, and then started to kind of pop in 2019. And we've just been growing ever since then. And so we help serious WordPress shops sort of slay their hosting dragons once and for all.
Oh, that's great. And I've got my great co-host, Stephen. Stephen, would you like to quickly introduce yourself to the new listeners and viewers?
Yeah, my name is Stephen Sauter from zipfish.io. And little known fact, we actually use Gridpane for everything. We started using them in 2019. So we use like Plus, cPanel stuff, all the managed WordPress hosting stuff, and no one beats it in speed. So if you're looking to manage servers, you're the guys.
All right. So he's already got a fact.
I didn't even pay for that to happen. I'm on the record. Like when I saw that Stephen was going to be on, I'm like, oh, wow, this is.
All right. So before we go into the main part of the interview, I just want to talk about one of our sponsors. Has been sponsoring the show for over 3 years now, and that's Kinsta Hosting. Kinsta Hosting is a premier WordPress hosting provider. If you're looking for quality hosting at a reasonable price for yourself or for your clients, I suggest that you go over to Kinsta. They've got all the bells and whistles, one-click backup, can change the version of PHP, got a great interface, great support. So if that's interesting, go over to Kinsta. And the main thing, if you do decide to buy one of their plans, and I suggest that you should do, is tell them that you heard about them on the WP-Tonic show. That really does help Kinsta, and it helps us as well. So let's go into the main part of the interview. So you mentioned that you were in the agency marketing world for about 13 years. So you really took what my first question was, your background and why you started Gridpane, but it's still a big jump, isn't it, from a marketing WordPress development design agency to starting your own hosting. What was some of the initial hurdles that you had to overcome in that actual change? I think that's a good start of the interview. Hopefully, Patrick.
Yeah. So the first thing that I had to do was fire all of my clients. And so that was interesting. I'd had a bit of experience with it. I had fired toxic clients before, certainly. But I knew that if I was going to go all in on this and invest, fully of my time and far more money than my wife would have preferred, I just had to clean the slate. And so that was challenging. And there are still a couple lingering, people that I'm very, very fond of that are sort of still in my private client group, that they're just running a Gridpane account, basically. But finding good developers, when you don't necessarily know how to tell the difference. That was a big one. I mean, I knew how to do all kinds of stuff inside of WordPress itself. But I mean, I wasn't competent to be able to tell whether that, that front end developer knew Vue.js. Like I could look at the end result and go, well, that works. But went through a lot of challenges there. And then I would say probably over the last 3 years, the biggest learnings has been in finding quality talent, and being able to know the difference and being able to kind of figure out your own sort of sniff test around who makes sense. Funding the work. We don't have any outside investment. We don't have any traditional VC investment. So that's always been an interesting part of the ride. It's just getting. I think the thing that we've done really, really well is that in the beginning we had all kinds of problems. Like things were basically always on fire because it was just sort of ragtag and held together by duct tape. And so my co-founder and I, Jeff, we just always jumped on everything as fast as we possibly could. And so that started to create this reputation of just outstanding customer support. And it was like, yeah, it's outstanding because it was like they didn't realize that we were just jumping on grenades. And fortunately, we were able to keep everything sort of held together long enough that the platform got stable, the product got stable, and we were able to round out the support team and the development team. And we're far more polished now than when we launched. So,
right. Before I throw it over to Stephen, there's just a follow-up question. Well, there's two paths here. I think later on I'm going to ask you about how you identify good development talent, because I've had similar problems myself. But my follow-through question is, I think with a lot of new companies or startups, whatever the way you want to call them, it's finding the real market fit. How long did it take you before you really were happy with, how you were fitting in to the market, that you found your real niche, your real the way to explain why people should care and the real needs that you were satisfying?
Yeah. So yeah, that was something that if I knew then what I know now, I think we would be in a different place. Because we spent probably a year mostly just taking feedback, iterating, making sort of incremental improvements to the platform. And we really started as this hosting control panel, and so we got compared to Run Cloud and Server Pilot and cPanel and Plesk and all these other options. And so in some ways, some of the pricing that we had, it was just like, well, this is really expensive as compared to other hosting control panels. But then, in 2019, I think when things started to flip for us, I literally remember the day. It was somebody asked a question and somebody in a Facebook group said Gridpane, and then somebody said +1, like below that, liked their post and then said +1. And then that was when we started having like double-digit month-over-month growth from that point onward. And then really through the end of 2019, and then it became even, much more apparent in 2020, when we had people coming to us from Kinsta, when we had people coming to us from WP Engine, from Flywheel, then we realized that it's like, yeah, we're not, yes, some of what we do, you could say it's a hosting control panel and you could put it in that neat box, but we're really sort of finding our place now as a hosting partner to serious WordPress agencies. And so I thought, I felt like based upon our growth in 2019, like, oh, this is what product market fit feels like. And it's like, once we actually started to talk to serious agencies like Stevens, and just hearing that it's like, oh, we're just having so much more impact for those people. Then it was like, wait, no, that's what product market fit feels like. When the sale isn't a sale, it's just, we're asking questions and I'm making sure that they're a good fit for us. And I'm making sure that we can check all the boxes that they need. That's when it was like, oh, that's what we are, And so we never really pivoted. We just sort of figured out who we spoke to the best and who we had the most impact for. And then the message, it wasn't that the message changed, it just resonated more with them.
Yeah. Over to you, Stephen.
When people are coming from the various like hosting providers out there or other panels and stuff to you guys, like what are the pains that you're seeing out in the industry right now? Because hosting is like this thing that has just like exploded. I mean, I think like Elementor's doing their own hosting now. Like everybody, like every service, if you have any massive plugin anywhere, they're starting to get into hosting.
Yep, they've got a cloud offering.
Yeah, so so many options. Like everybody's solving little things here and there.
Yep.
But you guys have like this benefit of seeing this aggregate of users coming from all different places. Like what are those pain points that you're seeing, and why are people migrating to your solution?
Yeah, I mean, it's a number of things. I mean, I think with certain providers, really large providers, there's sort of this sense and this feel of like they're just a number. The quality of the support is still pretty high, but it feels a bit like a take a number, deli style service. Like it doesn't feel high touch to them anymore. One thing that we definitely see a lot of, especially for sort of our ideal customer profile, is that they're at, a very respectable provider. They're very, very pleased with what they get, but they really don't ever get any kind of like plateauing or economies of scale. The host themselves gets the economies of scale, and so as your clients succeed, the bill just keeps going up and up and up and up and up. And I think that once people start to dig in deeper and they look and they see like, okay, so that company is actually using Google Compute Platform as the infrastructure provider. And then they go and look at the cost at Google Compute Platform and they go, wait a minute, I'm paying like an 8x or a 10x penalty here, and I think where it really clicks is if you're really competent at if you've got your business dialed in on WordPress, and you don't need a lot of hand-holding sort of at, the low-level stuff, sort of read the manual stuff, then you're paying for this premium support that you're not really capitalizing on, And so I think that, providers like Kinsta, WP Engine, they're absolutely fantastic for people that are starting, that are have a handful of sites, because the unit economics make a lot of sense then. But, we've had people that have had to come from other providers where they're like on 60 site plans and they only had 12 sites because they were paying the PHP workers tax. They had so many concurrent users that they're just paying this extreme tax, on really their success. And so, value for money is a big reason that people come to us. And I think that they like that we're just sort of transparent and accessible, and we're really building this strong community in our Facebook group and engaging in other groups. I think that they like that it's just sort of no BS, come as we are, sort of human beings doing business with other human beings. And I think, again, there's sort of that feeling of there's big monolithic, IPO tracked companies that sort of have lost their finger on the pulse,
Yeah, for sure. How did you guys start out as far as like marketing your services? I know like there's a lot of listeners that have different plugins or companies and they're starting out in like WordPress space. Like how do you get into that world? How did Gridpane start? How did you get the word out there that, hey, Gridpane's this awesome company?
Right. So, in that context, we've done absolutely everything wrong. So great ways to succeed is just follow what Patrick and the Gridpane family do and do something else, but because we haven't done any paid advertising really ever. We ran paid ads for like 3 days. And then Jeff was like, knock it off. That thing's on fire. People will come faster and discover the fires. If we've done anything really well, it's been, we've way overinvested in outstanding customer support. And so if you get customer support right and you get people to succeed on your platform, they're going to tell other people, and so the other thing that we've sort of done right, I mean, I say we haven't done any marketing. We've engaged very, very heavily in key Facebook groups. And I was doing that for at least 2 years, even before I launched Gridpane. I was just trying to answer questions, add value, never talk down about your competitors. Like I've probably mentioned Run Cloud more than, in certain instances, more than Gridpane, because I think that for certain people that need a certain thing, like they're a fantastic option. And for certain people at a certain budget, like you can't beat what they're doing over there, And so I think that a lot of people are just take. We see in the WP hosting group still to this day, someone will come in and ask a question and they'll get, 80% of the answers are, they don't even remotely relate to what it is that they asked. And it's just buy my crap. You know, they just shove their offer down people's throats. And that's just something that we've never worried about optimizing for, like hooking someone today. It's like, if I add enough value, worst case scenario, they're going to go, nah, they're not the right thing for me. But we still get people now to this day that's like, yeah, I've been watching you for like 18 months and I'm ready to try now. I was just waiting to see whether or not you'd fizzle out, you know? And it's like, oh, cool. So just showing up and being consistent, like it's you know, I guess it's the long shortcut. You know, you can't fake a reputation. You can't just buy your way into being respected in these groups. So that's really all we've done, is we've done a great job on customer support, and we tried to add a lot of value where we could. And that sort of has created word of mouth, and it's created the seeds that people find all the time, you know? So I guess take the long way around is the answer.
Yeah. I mean, like building that one-to-one interaction and user engagement, like always takes a lot of time. But once you get that engine going, it's an engine that's like super hard to stop.
Yeah.
You can get a lot of momentum behind that. Did you start engaging like in Facebook and stuff 2 years prior to starting Gridpane as like, this is something I'm going to do, so I'm going to start getting plugged into this? Or was it just like a natural thing, like, hey, I'm here, and then you start this thing, you know, it's a natural avenue to marketing Gridpane?
Yeah. So what was interesting is as I started to work on, you know, the tools that we were going to use internally for my agency, you know, I was like, at the time, I remember I was like way down the HHVM rabbit hole. For those of you that don't know, HHVM was hot for a minute before PHP 7 and 7.1, 7.2. It was a way to speed up WordPress, the PHP, you know, processing side of WordPress. And I remember finding a post by the CEO of Kinsta, and it was in a forum somewhere, and it was the third one that I'd found, and I was like, damn it, like I'm like 6 weeks behind that guy, you know, like we're going down the same rabbit holes and finding we're looking for the same information and posting questions and answering questions. And so I just ended up in the WP hosting group, and I'd done a lot of digging, and I'd done a lot of homework, and it was just like, that was stuff that was fun for me, you know, to learn and to solve problems and to help people solve problems. And it was in the process of doing that it was like, well, wait a minute, I could upgrade my customer. Like, instead of providing end user hosting to a mom and pop that needs one website, like I can work with people like myself, you know, because I'd gone so far on so many different axes. And so it wasn't planned, or like, oh, I'll set all this bait and then I'll change my mind. It was kind of a aha moment of like, I don't have to keep running my agency. Like I can change, you know? And it was scary, and I had a lot of support from my wife, who was like, do what makes you happy. You know, like, you're burned out on this stuff. You've done it for over a decade. You want to work with all those nerds, go work with all those nerds. And so that's what it was, you know? And it just so happened that it helped that I sort of laid that groundwork, I guess, you know?
We're going to go for our break. I think it's been a great discussion so far. We'll be back in a few moments, folks. We're coming back. We've had a great discussion with Patrick, the founder of Gridpane, and a new form of WordPress hosting, I would say. So what surprised me about the hosting industry, which we had Chris Lemmer on the show last year, Patrick, you know, I've forgotten his official title at Liquid Web, but Chris put me right about the hosting business, because I always think it's dominated by GoDaddy, by Bluehost, but he informed me that it's actually still a very fragmented industry, that the majority is still very small hosting companies. Did you realize that yourself when you entered, how fragmented the hosting industry still is? Because you do kind of get the impression that in market share, it's dominated by a couple of players, but that's not the case, is it?
Yeah, no. So interesting side note. I think Chris is the SVP of product.
Right.
I'm not sure, but we met just briefly at WordCamp US in 2019. And interestingly enough, Liquid Web was founded by some guys here in Lansing. I'm in the greater Lansing area in Michigan, right about there. And so Liquid Web is a big player in the hosting space. A2 Hosting, they're in Ann Arbor, which is like an hour from here. So for some reason, Michigan just cranks out hosting companies. But yeah, I mean, I knew how large the industry was. I mean, it's all of website hosting is roughly $150 billion globally. And so if we assume that WordPress is a third of that, you got $50 billion worth of business there. And if you look at some of the largest players, they're doing $150 million this year. Well, that's really a drop in the bucket in the whole big picture, and as we have expanded our reach, we have customers in 82 countries now. I was recently drilling down because we're always looking for who are providers that we can go with where we can expand our data center reach so we can deploy. Like we just added UpCloud there in the Nordics. That's the big reason that we wanted to work with them. But I did some research and it turns out that pretty much every single country, you look at the top 10 hosts in that country and they're all there. They're all company, like the top 10 hosts in France are all French hosting companies, and us just being ignorant in the United States or in our little bubble, we think, where's GoDaddy on that list? And they're not on the list, and if you look at Spain, you look at most countries, 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10, or 10 out of 10 they're not the players that you've ever heard of. And so, it's incredibly fragmented. And there's, that's why I think it's a good idea to find, even your competitors that maybe you're not going to ever do business with them, but, we can send all kinds of business to every single one of our competitors and every single one of us can win because it's a massive pie and it's growing. And I think that everybody offers just a slightly different thing from everybody else. And so even though you see this consolidation, Liquid Web is just, they're buying up plugin companies and hosting companies and they're trying to make better and better investments inside of WordPress. They're small by the standards of EIG and GoDaddy, but and then AWS is just like an order of magnitude bigger than that. But it's a massive industry, and I think it's definitely not too noisy. It's definitely not too crowded.
All right, over to you, Stephen.
So as you were thinking about the company that you wanted to build, everybody, like we talked about a little bit earlier, everybody's heading into the hosting space. You didn't do that. You were like, I'm going to build this crazy hybrid thing that kind of has a foot in both worlds and does both really well. Why did you go that route versus I'm just going to set up another hosting provider, a hosting company?
Yeah. So again, it really was just, it started as me scratching my own itch. So it was the real genesis behind it was I had a fantastic project manager who was great at WordPress. She could sell, she was great at customer support. She was awesome, but she couldn't spin up a server. And that was something that I could do. So I needed just a basic UI that she could press a couple of buttons and it would provision a server, And so what we started building was just for us, And then the more that we got it to a point where it's like, well, I could sell this to somebody. The more it became clear, and we very, very quickly, we got traction, we had a dozen or so users very quickly, just all word of mouth. We really went deep on that and we thought, let's make this the definitive hosting control panel for WordPress. At the time, really nothing like that existed. There's arguably one or two sort of similar solutions now. But the deeper that we went into that, the more that we realized, well, actually, we're sort of going all the way back to what it is that we originally wanted to build for our own agency, which is the definitive tool for the job for agencies. And so there, blind luck is sort of the answer. I didn't want to go into hosting because it is noisy and it's difficult to differentiate yourself. But I'm a big believer in Kevin Kelly, 1,000 True Fans, and I'm a big fan of Seth Godin's minimum viable audience. I knew that I didn't need to have 70,000 customers. I knew that there were I know that there's 1,000 of you out there that I can connect to, I can resonate with, and I can actually have a quality relationship with. And I don't have to do sleazy affiliate programs, or I don't have to do what everybody else is doing. And I can still have an impact. And so it wasn't cognizant, at the time of like, well, we'll keep it super narrow. But it just sort of happened that it was like, oh, this is what we are. And then the more we evolved, it was like, yeah, we're not just a hosting control panel anymore. And who knows what we'll call ourselves a year from now. But hopefully so long as our customers are happy, I really don't care what it's called. I mean, call it ham on rye. That's fine. It's whatever. So long as it resonates with people.
Fair enough. Something that I've noticed with your guys' marketing that you've been doing is you've been reaching out into like all different other like educational kind of spaces and building out courses and stuff that I've seen kind of on the Facebook groups.
Yep.
Why have you decided to take that approach into like building courses and the course route versus like, running some Google AdWords and going back to the paid route to try to kind of increase the brand or the reach of Gridpane?
Yeah. So in the beginning, what we sort of pictured is, well, what if one of our big problems at the beginning was we didn't have a lot of documentation, or any. So our long-term plan was like, let's have some. And then, if you're a pro user, you'll have this KB article, but if you're a developer user, maybe there'll be like an hour-long webinar underneath that goes like super deep, on all the firewall settings. And then Jeff can just explain all that crap, and so that was a plan that we had in the early days. And the more that we've just taken feedback from our users, the more we realize like we have all these fantastic tools. We can go very, very deep, not just on the how, but the why and the use cases. And the more that we started to do that, we got more feedback. And it was like, well, how do I sell that thing now? Like I think sort of a point at which it clicked that it was like, we should probably get some more of this material out there is I was doing a podcast and somebody was like, wait, you fired all of your clients. And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, how did you do that? And I'm like, well, I sent an email and I was delicate about it. And they're like, no, really, I would like you to show me exactly just step by step how you did that. And it's like, okay, I guess I could do that. I guess I could show people how to fire their clients, like lose money in 24 hours. Like, great, here's the next, smash hit in info products. But it was also just wanting to add more value to, like we have this fantastic tool and it allows you to bolt on this recurring revenue business to your existing agency. Maybe you do SEO, maybe you do just design. A lot of people aren't necessarily comfortable making that kind of sale or even making a high ticket sale. Like my agency before, a lot of people want to know how I grew that to what I did to the point where I could kill it all and invest heavily, in this harebrained idea, and so it was mostly just wanting to add more value, add more context, and definitely now that we're sort of building all of these assets and we have all of this stuff which can be repurposed in so many ways, now it makes sense for us to look at paid acquisition and strategic partnerships and actually getting the word out in a more purposeful, kind of controlled way as opposed to just the continued organic word of mouth. So,
yeah, that's cool. Back to you, Jonathan.
I think we're going to wrap up the podcast part of the show. Hopefully, I'm sure Patrick can stay with us for a little bit more of the interview, which you'll be able to see the whole interview plus the bonus content on the WP-Tonic YouTube channel. So I'm going to be asking Patrick a little bit more controversial questions in the bonus content. So please, like I say, go over to our YouTube channel and you'll be able to see the whole interview plus the bonus content. Before I just wrap up everything, I just want to say that also Stephen and his crew at Zipfish have helped the WP-Tonic become a real speed machine. If you're looking for help, you're having problems with your WordPress site around speed, go over to Zipfish, and they'll be able to help you out. So, Patrick, what's the best way for people to find out more about you and what you're up to?
Yes, so you can just go to gridpane.com, obviously. And you can also go to our Facebook group, which is Self-Managed WordPress. We'll link those in here or add them to the show notes. That's where I'm most active and most accessible is our Facebook group. And actually on what is it? The new one. I keep forgetting the name of it. What is it? It's the all audio new social network that I literally just signed up for. Clubhouse. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So Clubhouse. Awesome.
Yeah, Stephen. Yes, there. Either Stephen or Spencer have been. I think it was Spencer that was telling me about.
I'm not on Clubhouse yet.
Yeah. No.
You remind me, Patrick. Listeners and viewers got some exciting news at the end of the month. WP-Tonic with Stephen, Spencer, and all the key players of our Friday Roundtable show. We're all going to be starting a Facebook group under the domain of WP-Tonic. It should be a great resource if you're looking to optimize and automate your WordPress website. So we'll be telling you more about that as the month rolls out. So like I say, we're going to wrap up the podcast. Please join us for the bonus content. We'll see you next week, folks. Bye.
Bye.
Right, Patrick, bonus content. I have a little bit of a hobby. I'm trying to word this a little bit of can't find the right word, but I'll just explain. Irritation in the hosting area, and my irritation is around people normally in Microsoft corporate IT departments that think that they can save a few pennies by spinning up a few WordPress websites on Amazon Web Services, and they know nothing about Linux or Linux administration. And that's fine until either they leave and there's no documentation and nobody knows anything about it, or when they get hacked and I get a call, what the hell do we do? Amazon Web Services don't provide any support. They're not, and we can't fix it, but you did some work for us about 2 years ago. Can't you sort it out? What's your feelings about corporate offices, IT, mostly Microsoft dominated, kind of thinking that they're going to go into the Linux world and use Amazon Web Services?
Yeah, well, I will try to keep the expletives to a minimum, but yeah, I mean, we see a lot of that all over the place. We see, it's not just that segment of the IT sphere. There's all kinds of people that just regularly recommend, like, oh, we'll just go directly to DigitalOcean and spin up a box and then install Webinoli on it. Okay, well, that's a good idea if you know everything else that you need to know to actually harden that box, because Webinoli doesn't do that. That's a good idea if you also have something like BitNinja, or you're using, Immunify 360 or something like that, because you need all that security coverage as well. And so I think that unfortunately, and WordPress itself in a way sort of perpetuates this same problem, we see people that bitch about the cost of a plugin, like, how dare you sell your plugin and make money, to keep the lights on so that you can continue investing in the plugin that I extract an enormous amount of value out of,
Terrible, shocking, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's like, and that stuff drives me off the wall. Like Sridhar, if you know Sridhar, big in the Oxygen community, he's released some tweaks and some improvements that really make a material difference to the Oxygen platform. And there were some people that were like,
I've been trying desperately to get him on the show, actually, Patrick, but he doesn't. I've done outreach through LinkedIn, and he doesn't reply to anything. Do you
He's
think he
active
does?
on Facebook. He's active on Facebook, and I can ping him and see if he wants.
Ask him. Hopefully,
he's like 14 hours off.
I don't think he's one of the people I've upset in the WordPress community, actually, Patrick. But he
Probably
might
not.
be. You know, I've always been nice to him.
Yeah, he's a super chill guy. But he released, you know, a plugin sort of add-on to Oxygen, and he got just vilified by people like, well, they're going to do that in version 3.9 or whatever anyway. So why should I give you this money? And it was just like, you guys, like, you know, like, and these are the exact same people that will then complain about their deadbeat clients that aren't paying their bills, you know? And so it's like, unfortunately, open source does create this mindset of everything is free. And it's like, one only need to look at Red Hat, which is a $1 billion company that's entirely built on open source software. And you go, well, that's clearly somebody's paying for that, you know, like they're not just printing the money, you know, locally. So it is unfortunate that there is that mindset, because I mean, it's sort of like the, you know, you think the professional is expensive, wait until you see what it costs when the amateur does it, you know, like the pro has to come and mop up the mess anyway. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of people just have very skewed value judgments about what, you know,
there's certain elements. There are certain elements in the WordPress community that are actively, how to put it, I'm struggling because I'm trying not to be fair here, Patrick. It's a mythology that, you know, you just go to DigitalOcean, you spin it up, and which is fine when test mode or some site that you directly own or control and you're prepared, you know, to take the consequence. But if anything happens to that droplet, anything happens to it, you know, you have no backup or whatever, there's no point in going to DigitalOcean because they don't want to know, do they? So
yeah, they'll look at that it's running and they'll go, hey, it's 5 by 5 on our end, you know. Yeah,
there's definitely something interesting about like the similarities between like a client who has a WordPress site and doesn't really know about updating WordPress or how to figure out if there's like the littlest problem. I feel like people in the hosting space oftentimes do that, or when they want to get into hosting a little bit or host their own site, like they do that same kind of thing where it's like, oh, I know WordPress, I'm a programmer, I'm going to go to DigitalOcean, spin up a thing. But what happens when PHP gets updated? What happens when Linux has an update, or what happens when Nginx has an update? Like patching those security things. Like you don't think often through all the ramifications of when you're doing it yourself. There's a lot of extra cost that goes along with it that might not be apparent at the day one that you decide to do that.
Yep. I'll give you a really good example of sort of the extreme version of that. We had, this was before we moved, so this was probably 4 or 5 months ago. And I got a text. I was reading a book to my youngest, and I get a text from Bobby, who, if anybody's in the Gridpane family, they know Bobby. He's our head of customer care. And he texts me and he says, hey, so-and-so's book just dropped. And I'm like, I don't care. Like, who? Okay. And he's like, and it has 6,000 concurrent users, and it's on, and they're hosted at Gridpane. And I'm like, oh, okay. And so I tell Quinn to wait a second. I go outside and I sort of text the team and rally the troops, and we figure out what's going on. But a notorious celebrity tweets out to their 750,000 followers, hey, my book's dropping. And they all come to buy it. And then they're like, number one, they're on the cover of CNN.com. And there's literally 6,000 concurrent users reading a book excerpt. And there's 150 people in the checkout every second. You know, like they're selling books at a rate of just like thousands of dollars per minute. And if you don't have a team that you can lean on to say, hey, here's what we're doing. We've got to immediately put it into maintenance mode. We've got to vertically scale that. We got to get it behind Cloudflare. Like he was able to hit the easy button with us and pay our engineering team to sort of to bail them out. You know, if you don't have those people to lean on, well, now you're going back to that client and saying, sorry that, we did 50,000 in the first 10 minutes and then it was down for 5 hours. because we have no idea what we're doing, that's where it gets even more severe. It's not just the death by 1,000 cuts of no updates. It's like, what if now all of a sudden that's a production workload and it matters? That's what you pay the big bucks for, or the moderate bucks.
Yeah, sure. I didn't know the podcast part of the show. I didn't really know where to take this around. Was we going to spend a lot of time explaining exactly what Gridpane is?
Mm-hmm.
But being it's only a half hour, the actual podcast, and because of your experience and your background, I didn't want us to see. I was presuming that a lot of the audience, but if you don't mind, Cloudways have done a fantastic job of promoting themselves,
Mm-hmm.
and hopefully they're coming on the show sometime in February to have a discussion with us.
Yeah.
And you mentioned some of the panel providers. So with Gridpane, do you see yourself as a kind of hybrid between the panel providers and something that Cloudways is provided? How would you, in your own mind, describe what Gridpane has become?
Yeah. So what I wanted in the software that we needed is I wanted what I call sort of the 5 main pillars of managed WordPress. Okay. And it's basically security, updates, staging, backups, and caching. Okay. And so if you look at all of the managed WordPress players out there, the Kinstas, the WP Engines, the Pagely's, they all sort of have those table stakes things that they get right. Okay. And some of them talk about them as though they're really, unique and special, but they're so similar that some of them are using the exact same software, like down to the individual configs. And so we built software to check all of those boxes. And in many ways, Cloudways has a fantastic product, but they're not focused just on WordPress. And so their people aren't focused just on WordPress. RunCloud has a fantastic control panel, but they're also not focused just on WordPress. And so we have these software tools that are super way down the WordPress rabbit hole, that, we have capabilities that you can't even find at the billion-dollar players. Like we're just now launching like multi-site cloning, multi-site staging, multi-site failover, things that you just can't find anywhere else, and things that companies like Cloudways, it'll be unlikely that they'll ever decide to go that deep, because unless they decide to just have sort of a specialized offering. And when you combine that level of software and that capability with 24/7 engineers that know WordPress inside and out, you're very, very close to a managed WordPress feel, But because we've decoupled the infrastructure and we allow you to connect to any infrastructure that you want, you have much better value for money. Your unit economics per site are really as good as they can get in the managed space. And so we started as a hosting control panel, but where we're going now and the people that we're talking to now, it's really sort of a specialized solution for larger WordPress agencies. That we certainly have clients that love us that have like one site that does $4 million a year on WooCommerce, and they just needed really good reliability, really good performance, and they were sort of getting murdered at some of the conventional usual suspects. But the people who have the most impact for us, people who have dozens or hundreds or even 1,000 sites or more, that want the same kind of capability that they could get at a WP Engine, but they don't want to get sort of hit over the head or hit over the wallet, on the cost of all that traffic and bandwidth and everything else. And so really the tool that we built it's exactly what you would build if you wanted to build a managed WordPress hosting company. And that's what I needed. And so that's what we built. And then once we got there, it was like, oh, cool, it's a hosting control panel. But then it's like when you bolt support onto it and then you bolt on sort of constant innovation, it's like, yeah, you're really very, very close to a managed provider. It's just the biggest difference between us and them is that you're not locked into, you have to use GCP. You're not locked out of the box, like you have root level access, So it does definitely blur the lines between if you were running, a control panel type solution or if you were in a fully managed environment. you know, but
it's a hybrid. I think what you're describing is a hybrid, isn't it?
Yeah, and I would say, you know, 80+% of the customers that we're getting now, they're not coming up. There's certainly some people coming up from control panels, or some people who've they've gone from host A to B to C to they figured out that Cloudways was better, and then they come up to us. But a lot of people are sort of coming laterally to us from the traditional, you know, the Kinstas, the flywheels, that kind of space, because it tastes like chicken, you know, like it feels a lot like managed for them. And then they like the control, they like the autonomy, they like that they own their own boxes, and they like the value.
Yeah, because also, before I throw over to Stephen, I was having a conversation with somebody. The week's gone so rapidly; it's been amazing. But I think it was on Monday, and I had somebody refer to me, and I was having a discussion with them because we provide our own hosting, which you're aware of because we've had a discussion as well, haven't we? But I had a client that was recommended to me, and I was having a chat with them, and I just came to the conclusion this person wasn't a good fit for what we were offering. Yep. And I was just honest with him. I said, I just don't think we're a good fit. You know, what you're looking for is not what we're going to be we could provide you, but it's really not our focus. We're focused in this, and they took it fine, because I think, you know, I think you learn that there's certain groups that there's nothing wrong with it. It's just not your focus, is it?
Yep, exactly. I mean, and I've seen sort of both ends of that spectrum. Just yesterday, I spoke with a couple IT guys at a university, and I think that we could be their, you know, their salvation to some degree. But then I also look at, you know, universities and organizations like that. They have super long sales cycles. They've got to go and get permission from so many different dads, you know, and it's just like, I don't know is they are a great fit for us, even though we can check all the right boxes for them. And then similarly, on the other side of the spectrum, we've had people that come to us that are like, I can't wait to sign up. I'm so delighted. What's a droplet, you know, or what's a VPS? And it's like, let's slow down. Like this probably isn't the right thing for you, you know, and there's nothing wrong with just saying, hey, you know, ideally you will have had this background context. You will have gone, you know, maybe you've used Cloudways, or you've used Server Pilot, or you
I think the point, the people, listeners and viewers might be struggling why I brought this up, but I just wanted to say to you, the reason I'm bringing up listeners and viewers is taking on clients. If you're, you know, totally strapped for money and totally desperate, and you've got to pay, you're looking to pay next month's rent, don't listen to this, because I'm not telling you, because if you're in those circumstances, you're going to have to take on whatever work comes your way. But if you're not totally in that circumstances, taking on people that don't really fit into what the product really is suitable, has long-term consequences, doesn't it, Patrick?
Absolutely. And I mean, you know, I'm not joking when I said I fired all my clients, but I definitely do not recommend that for people who can't even, you know, comfortably fire one. You know, like I was in a different place, and I was very kind about it. I didn't, you know, you're fired.
There's ways of doing it, and ways of not doing it, isn't it?
But I will say that, you know, there was an inflection point in my agency that was probably 5 years before I ultimately spun it down, where I realized that there was a threshold at which, if it was below this dollar amount, it wasn't that they weren't worthy or anything like that. Yeah. It was just the mindset was going to be so different and so sort of locked up that when I presented a concept, or when I presented like a big sort of holy shit idea, they were going to be like, you know, and then it's like, if I can't have the right impact, and I can't have the right leverage, and I can't have fun, then why? I'm not the right thing for them. I need to point them to, you know, to Upwork, or I need to point them to Wix, you know, go and start there, work your way up. And then maybe it makes sense. You know, like we see people all the time where it's like, yeah, they need to go and get, you know, another year or two of seasoning, because then they'll let, you know, they look at some of the stuff that we're doing and they think like, oh my God, that's so expensive. And it's like, No, if you actually know, if you know this space and you know the capabilities, it's like, no, like you can't really, you have to be able to, you have to have perspective, as with all things in life, you know? And so
yeah. Over
the
to
worst
you.
thing to do is taking a client that you know you shouldn't take because you need the money, and it's super hard. And I've made that mistake before, but as much as possible, I recommend getting yourself in a spot where you don't make that decision. If it doesn't feel right, you're gonna pay for it in gray hairs and sleepless nights.
There you go. Over to you, Stephen.
I think something interesting about, like, as you talked through like the trajectory of everything, you went from agency to like very much more of a product focused thing, right? And you can productize services, but there's inherent differences between selling a product that someone subscribes to on like an ongoing basis and selling services and trying to productize it. And I feel like we're in the service space, right? Like we're there making people's sites faster, getting in the code every day. Is the grass greener, right? And it's always like, oh, if I had that product, like that's the next thing we need to go to is that product. It like, do you feel like they're like that is a true thing? Or do people on the product side look at the service side sometimes and say like, hey, we need a service? You guys are kind of in the middle there. So like, what's your perspective?
So that's really interesting. I will answer it through even a slightly different lens. So I was in this pricing seminar recently, and they were talking about the idea that when you have people that are buying at a low dollar amount, they tend to want all of the features, or excuse me, they want all of the features, but they're fine with the fact that they don't have a ton of support. And then at a super high dollar amount, they don't care about paying extra for usage and additional features for each one of their users, but they want outstanding support, And so there's these different mindsets that exist from very, very low dollar all the way to, enterprise $150,000 a year stuff, And so I think that there is no silver bullet. I think that as much as we started as sort of a self-serve, sort of B to small b software as a service product, we're moving sort of into the SMB space, and it'll be more, not so much trial driven. It'll be more demos, getting on the phone, talking to our people, and us showing the impact that our stuff can have. And within all of that, there's going to always be that gray area of people that need custom services, that need extra. And for us, it's really just a matter of trying to not become consultingware. I think that would be a recommendation that I have for anybody that's trying to productize a service, whether you're going all the way to making a software as a service solution, or some sort of gray area where it's like you built a website and now you have a website as a service. What you don't want to do is, you got your pricing page of your good, better, best. Don't make your best have too many options in it, because if you become consultingware, and if you have to go down every single person's rabbit hole to get exactly what they want, then you're not going to get that leverage. You're not going to get the repeatable outcomes that people want. And so I think that we sort of live in both worlds. The grass is green on both sides. Like go back and forth.
Yeah, that's interesting. Because from what you were saying, like it sounds like if you are a product company, eventually as you go up those rungs, you get pulled into the service area. If you're a service company, as you go up those rungs, you get a little pulled into the product thing. Like you're building some actual things to service your clients that you're providing your services to. And so there's like this nice place in the middle somewhere.
Yeah, well, you start to when you get to a certain scale, which we're not even remotely anywhere near it, but like if you look at ClickFunnels, I think they did something like $115 or $120 million in 2020. If you drill down, you see that they did something like $20 or $30 million in services, and you can't even see any service offering anywhere in their like front-facing funnels. And so what it is clearly behind the scenes for people who have very, very high usage. It's, do you need us to build an entire funnel campaign for you? Do you need us to build an entire challenge funnel for you? Oh, it's $100,000, or it's, it's some high ticket sale. And it's like, when you get to a point where you're saturating the market and you can't really grow anymore, you have to add services in, and if you're a service company, you can only get so big before you have to productize. If you want to keep growing, not that that's the end all be all. I mean, that's certainly what the VCs want to see, but they not interested in what
Well, I think we're going to wrap up our bonus. All I've got to say, Patrick, hopefully later on in the year, you'll agree to come back have another discussion with us, because I've really enjoyed our chat. I think we covered a lot of territory in about 45, 50 minutes. Hopefully, listeners and viewers, you got some real value. If you didn't, I'll be amazed. Please join us on the live on the WP-Tonic Roundtable shows. You know, it's a live discussion with a great group of panelists. JJ, the former co-presenter of WordPress Weekly, is going to be joining us regularly as part of the panel in the next few weeks. It should be a great panel show, and you can join that at 8:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time every Friday, and watch it on the WP-Tonic Facebook page, and comment and be part of the discussion. I would love that. We'll see you next week with hopefully another great guest. We'll see you soon, folks. Bye.
Take care, guys. Thank you.